changes in tax breaks. However, what is the beauty is that compliance is becoming a bit more easier. At the same time, there are a lot of tax breaks which are coming in form of deductions coming into the major industries that are going in for investments that are required. This is something over and above that. Of course, there is a bit of a compliance burden coming in.
No, but I think no tax concessions. I would say I want to bring in Professor Dipankar here. I think no tax concessions actually before an election is indicative of a new India. I think it's indicative of a new India. Complete difference of approach. A new kind of governance. Unpredictable governance. I think that's the way we should look at it. What do you think? PK, what do you think? MR?
Predictable governance. This is governance. This is the definition of governance, that you don't hold shops during the election day.
Absolutely.
It is popular but not populist.
Arnab,
it is popular but not populist. That is the feature that I get from this budget.
Absolutely.
Arnab, I took a few notes during the budget.
Yes.
And let me tell you and encapsulate what I think has been the marginal or the major shift. The most important item across the board is the implementation of digitization in multiple sectors, from education to finance to land and revenue to custom to taxation to payment to banking. If this is done well, and I'm sure it will be done, it will give an uplift to the GDP by several basis points. India in the next 3 years will become the world's most robust and the world's most formidable digital economy. Mark my words, 3 years later we will have this discussion. This is going to have far-reaching consequences to alleviate poverty, to obliterate corruption. The rest of it is all marginal. And I'm glad, Arnab, that what MR also said, we have to move away from this stupid mindset that every budget we must, like hungry pariahs, look for tax cuts. We must look for growth. We must look for avenues of formidable progress.
No, when we look at
that's what we should be looking at.
When we look at tax, when we look at tax, when we look at tax, you know, there's a heavy tax on crypto and virtual digital assets, and I want Ashish to come in on that. So 30% tax on income from virtual digital assets. This may mean that India will not be banning any crypto, but will put a very, very high tax to it. So this is an acknowledgement. This is an acknowledgement of the high volume transactions of crypto, but the government will levy a high tax. So if someone's trying to use crypto for other reasons, they won't get away. Ashish.
Republic TV has been carrying on this campaign about legitimizing crypto and getting rid of scamsters. And I think this is a great step forward in doing both those things. Crypto will now be legit.
Absolutely. And you know, the fact is that what we always want is one leeway. When virtual tax assets as gifts are also going to be taxed. So there's no leeway. The approach is very tight. No leeway policy here, which is different. So I see a change in governance style. Ashish.
So this budget has clearly spelled out a long-term roadmap that has been laid out. So any element of tax evasions or using cryptos or any other ways to circumvent have been clearly dealt with. I think the one number the market was looking at, and that is the capital expenditure, that has been overshot. I mean, market was looking at close to about 20% capital expenditure growth, but the budget has, speaking of nearly 35+%, I think extremely positive. And on the fiscal deficit number as well, if you look at it, it was originally budgeted at 6.8, it's come at 6.9. So and even for the next year, it's close to about 6.4%.
What do you think of the two-year window to file updated returns? I think that's very taxpayer friendly.
That is that's one aspect of it, but what it does is it takes the burden of the headache out of the taxpayer. That in case he misses out on certain things, or in case there is a delay, at least the criminal angle of that can get attributed to him is done away. Then it puts him at peace. So I think a real long-term roadmap has been laid. The one number that I kept on saying, which is the capital expenditure growth, that has been extremely positive, 35%. I think the markets are going to cheer this. This is one number, and the other aspect which we spoke of, absolutely left untouched, that is the taxes.
No, I also think that, you forgot the big record GST announcement. It was fantastic. I mean, look at the number there, Abhishek. Look at the number there, PK Basu. 1.41 lakh crores,
in fact,
highest till date. Are we not proud of that? Isn't that something to really commend?
You see, Desh badal raha hai. Desh badal raha hai.
Is PK taking that?
No, I think Sohail was taking that, but I don't see him on the screen. Yeah.
Said one nation, one tax. This is what has happened.
No, I can take that. See, I think.
Yes, Ashish.
No, I think in the morning somebody said that, this is because of the debt that has gone up. This is because of the boost that has been given. How do you have a situation wherein GST collection has been going on at a 1 lakh crore plus rate for almost since October now? This is 1.4 lakh crore GST collection. Is it because of some boost? Is it because of some cosmetics?
Let's get a first industry chamber reaction with Juzar Khorakiwala, President of the IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry, joining us now. What's your overall reaction? Mr. Khorakiwala, can you hear me? I just saw you there. You've seen the budget. What's the big takeaway for you? Okay, we've lost the line with him. We'll keep him on air till we can go across to him. That is, and in the meantime, Abhishek, we will also be getting the political reactions in just some time. I want to also mention here that there's a tax benefit for startups has been extended. So that's a big sigh of relief for the startup sector. Cryptocurrencies to be taxed, and corporate surcharge is being reduced from 12% to 7%, and she's also reduced minimum alternate tax on cooperative societies to 15%, from 18.5%. So there's a little bit of tinkering there, not a whole lot really, to be very honest. But the big figure is that the gross GST collections for the month of January 2022 are 1,40,986 crores, which is the highest, PK, since the inception of GST. We can't forget that. That's a big indicator of where the economy stands.
Yes, the economy is clearly doing very well, and that's evident in all the tax numbers, not just GST. If you look at corporate tax revenue, very strong. Personal income tax revenue, very strong. So across the board, the revenue performance has been spectacular, and I think it's a little bit of a surprise that the government is still projecting that this year's fiscal deficit will be 6.9% of GDP. They are being unnecessarily conservative with that estimate, because the actual outcome will be much lower than that. And this is because the revenue numbers are so strong that it really makes no sense to hide that fact. Yeah. I mean, there's a very strong revenue performance. You're not going to get a fiscal deficit of 6.9% of GDP. It will be much lower than that, and yet the government is being unnecessarily conservative in estimating that number. Last year, they estimated at the time of the budget that the deficit would be 9.5% of GDP. It turned out to be only 8%. So these things, the government has actually done much better on revenue, including GST, including corporate tax revenue, including personal income tax revenue, than they are
absolutely.
Here.
I just want to make I want to make one point. I want to make one point on crypto. I want to make one point. I want to make one point on crypto. Crypto comes under a crippling tax regime, and that's good, because 30% on capital gain plus 1% at the time of purchase and sale, so a total of 32% tax on crypto, even as RBI brings its own currency. I think a big messaging there. Government says we are mature, we can handle things. Look at what they've done. They're cleaning up of land records, single point registration of sales deeds possible across the country. I think that's really very, very cool. And in crypto, losses incurred not to be adjusted against capital gains. So the government's saying no leeway. MR, government is saying no leeway. Don't try to be smart. Don't try to show losses. Don't expect us to, the government seeing through what is seen to be all kinds of jugaad that people do to get past the system. Do you agree with me, Professor Dipankar, first from Jammu? Government's not going to give anyone any leeway.
Absolutely, Arnab, on this crypto taxation. Crypto taxation is the best thing that has come in this budget.
Dipankar, Professor Dipankar.
For narco-terror purposes in this country. And there were people
Professor
who were
Dipankar, I said. Professor Dipankar.
They should not be curbed, and they should flow with the technology.
This bubble had to be pricked.
With the technology,
So the best thing to do about it is not to ban it, but to put a crippling tax regime on it, as a result of which, at least where India is concerned, this particular thing is going to die its natural death. So nobody can say that the government has banned it. But at the same time, the bubble component, which could have destabilized a lot of things, that is in a sense taken care of. But let me just come back to what Professor Basu said. You know, one of the things that he said that the government is being overtly conservative with our tax projections. I think with so many imponderables, it is better to err on the side of caution for a very simple reason. Because you see, there are so many things that are at risk. There's a global geopolitical, there's a problem geopolitical. There is basically, you know, we are still a game on monsoons. There is an East Asian crisis booming. So under those circumstances, to be conservative about our fiscal targets, particularly revenues, I think is not a very bad thing. So if we do better, all the better. What is important is that the government has committed to increasing capital spending and it is not withdrawing from that particular object of it. And I think that is extremely welcome.
I think I would also want to mention about the 5G auctions. Abhishek, the 5G auctions are going to happen, but that's not been, has the money, has the revenue that's going to come in, has it been allocated within the budget numbers? Abhishek? I'm not sure it has. That's extra.
No, and in fact, that's something which is going to.
That's a good
That's
sign.
something which is going to give more money to the government, which is not part of the book. So obviously, the revenues by the end of this year would look even better for the government once the 5G auctions take place.
That's supreme.
And, that's a good sign.
That's a good sign.
What the Congress did was they kind of allocated sums of money and therefore almost pegged the auctions in a manipulative manner. I think what Nirmala has done is followed the fair way. If it's an auction, how the hell can you actually estimate? That means you're giving away the base or the reserve price.
Yeah.
So they've done a smart thing. So much for Chidambaram and Rahul's intellectual heft.
Well, the Congress party reactions are largely forgettable. I think they wrote it about a week back and they're all putting it out as soon as they can right now. Same thing, visionless budget, reliefless budget.
See, the Congress has a problem for every solution. That's who they've become. They have a problem for every solution.
Precisely.
They are more concerned about Fiji than about India.
Absolutely, precisely. But I'd like to say here that if you look at it very, very logically out here, that I think you know we missed the small points out here. Customs duty on umbrellas increased. Messaging, China, don't think you can sell us your umbrellas.
Correct.
You know, and not just that. In case the Chinese think they are smart, they're going to bring it in parts. Even the parts of umbrellas have been taxed higher. So basic message to the world is, listen, we can manage our own umbrellas, thank you. And I think
Mamata
that's
Banerjee might object. Mamata Banerjee might object.
Why would she? Why would
the umbrella queen.
No.
I think one thing we are glossing over is the following.
Yeah.
How many countries apart from, say, United States and China actually have their own 5G technology? This is something that we have developed. And this is something now for which processes are taking place.
Okay.
There is this basically fills me with pride.
Is the guest
we
ready?
are basically going to jump massively where our digital architecture is concerned. This digital architecture, remember the Jam Trinity enabled us to transfer cash to so many hundreds of millions of people at a time when the United States is still writing checks.
Yeah.
This is huge. Let us not gloss over it.
I want to say
this moment as being India's moment.
First of all, I just want to check whether I have the audio link back with our guest there from the IMC. Is he back there now, Mr. Hello? Mr. Juzar Khorakiwala, no, I haven't got the audio yet. I'm sorry. We're making him wait. It's terrible. But apologies for that. Mohandas Pai, hi. This is not a nation before election budget. This is not an election budget. This is a budget with a vision. It does not begin and end with an election.